I would like to officially call the June 4th City of West Bend Bid Board meeting. We do have enough for a quorum. So if we just start with the approval of the minutes of last month's meeting of May 7th, if we could have
Motion to approve.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. The agenda items for consideration, Carissa, if we could discuss the financial report?
Yep, so if you scroll down into the packet, you will see the updated financial report. Everything's pretty much normal, the same old, same old. We did do the revised budget, including the 2023 carry forward for the bid facade grants, the 2024 investment interest collected to date, and then I did update the undesignated fund balance because that wasn't updated for a while.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Moving on, we have the Downtown Master Plan presentation by John Fellows. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you all?
Good.
Great. I did put a little map in front of you. It's a map of the downtown master plan area and the bid boundaries. I don't know if you've actually seen how those two overlay, but I thought it might be helpful for you to have a copy of that just so you kind of understand the bid boundaries as well as the downtown area. They sort of match up, but one is definitely smaller than the other. So I was asked today to give a presentation on the downtown master plan. And essentially, I'm going to go over the presentation that was given earlier this year from Grafe. But before I started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself because I haven't met all of you. Some I have, some I haven't. But I've been working in planning for about 27 years. I'm married. I have a graduating high school senior, so she'll be graduating here this weekend. And I like to do all sorts of different things. I like to travel, garden. I like to ride my bike around, do different things. So kind of a variety of different things. So, and then from an educational background, I worked in some smaller communities, larger communities. From that perspective in my education, I have a background in architecture, urban planning, urban design, and have experience with like historic preservation and some other similar topics. So, from that perspective. So I'm going to just kind of jump right in here and go into the presentation. And at the end, I'll leave time for questions. And I know Mr. Allen probably has some for me that he's already prepared me for. So you might all be able to try to stump me too a little bit. So just an introduction to the plan. The city has not really looked at a downtown master plan since 1999. This particular plan was just adopted this March. There was also an initiative for the riverfront back in 2006. So it's been over 20 years where it was a deep dive. And so a lot of communities will either in 10 or 20 years revisit their downtown master plans or area plans. So just wanted to talk really about what the plan is. The plan looked at the downtown area, basically from Regner Park down to Chestnut Street on the south, and then essentially 8th over to Indiana are the furthest extents of the boundaries as shown on that map up there. There was 2 deliverables that were given for this particular project. There's the master plan, and then there's the downtown streetscape plan. Both of those documents were adopted by the city. The process began last spring and wrapped up early spring, late winter of this year. The next couple slides I'm going to go through have a lot to do with engagement. Now, I wasn't around for the engagement, so some of this might seem very familiar to you. Some of you actually might have answered some of these surveys and participated. But there was a public survey. There were 672 responses. And there was a variety of formats. So there's also some engagement with the alderpersons, the bid business owners, other stakeholders groups throughout the process in addition to the survey. But the survey did provide the team with a great amount of information with regard to people's thoughts. And so there was a couple key questions. The survey indicated that about 8% of visits downtown, people visit downtown daily, while about a quarter of the respondents visit once a week, and about 32% visited a few times a month. So, there's a variety of people who are coming and going from downtown. Some are always there. Others, are frequently a little less from that perspective. So one of the first questions they ask on the survey was, what do you like about visiting downtown West Bend? And there's a couple highlights. One was the restaurant options, walkable environments, and the riverfront. And then there was an other category. So often in surveys, you'll get the other. So that also often is sort of at least from a planning perspective, those are the intriguing answers. So it was the Bend, the farmer's market, the trail, the Christmas decor downtown, and live music. So those were some of the things that those 672 people felt were also important to them. The follow-up question was about dislikes in downtown. And so I just want to have you think back in this particular question, think about the respondents. They were answering this last summer. So this was during construction. This was before any new construction. People were actually, probably walking on the new sidewalks and things like that. So, or, using new parking and those types of things. So just kind of put yourself a year in the past, but the dislikes were parking, new construction, lack of scenic views from Main Street. But some of the other categories were the unsafe sidewalks, lack of greenery, vacant storefronts, lack of kid-friendly things to do, the backs of the buildings facing the riverfront, and a lack of public restrooms. So the other question that was also asked in the survey was, what improvements would help you visit downtown more often? And so those included better use of underutilized properties, multi-season outdoor seating and dining, and public restrooms. And then there was a series of other ones that included dog-friendly bars and restaurants and safer sidewalks. There's some reoccurring themes to a lot of the answers. One of the other questions that they asked was, what uses are most important to bolster or improve downtown? And so one of the key topics or answers there, which had the highest rating, was the diversity of shopping options, multiple season outdoor dining, and entertainment nightlife. So again, a couple reoccurring things there with the outdoor dining is sort of a reoccurring topic. So the plan, and I'm sure a lot of you have already read the plan, but there's two major kind of principles of the plan. There is the vision statement, and then there's the guiding principles. The vision statement is sort of an overall arching statement, which basically states to celebrate the downtown as the focus of community life in West Bend and keeping place of a community heritage. And then in this slide, which is very small and you're not going to be able to read it, are a series of several guiding principles that talk about very specific things. And these sort of are overarching, these are overarching factors that you'll see throughout the document. So I wanted to talk too a little bit about the master plan and how it's organized. First, there's an introduction, then there's an existing condition. So there's sort of an analysis of where downtown is at that point. Then there was the series of engagement questions, answers, all of that sort of data, which we just sort of went over, as well as then we get into sort of, I would call the meat of the document that's going to be used ongoing in the next number of years, which is the recommendations and the implementation chapter. So the recommendations are broken down into 4 areas. That's the urban design framework, circulation and parking, development and redevelopment, and then placemaking and activation strategies. The placemaking and activation strategies fit into the implementation section for in the next 1 to 3 years. That's kind of a goal. My experience in implementation, sometimes that might get pushed to 4 or 5. Has a lot to do with funding and opportunities and things like that. And then with the development and redevelopment, those address both public, private, as well as public-private type projects. So I'm going to dive next in sort of the urban design framework. So within the plan, you'll find this particular map. It sort of sets the stage for the concept. So, there are redevelopment opportunities. Those are the areas that have the orange circle with sort of the dashes around it. The plan also identifies historic sites and contributing historic buildings within the historic National Registered Historic District. It talks also about connections and improvements between different things. That's where on the map, if it was a little larger, you'd be able to see the arrows between some highlights about some facade improvements. Also, a little bit about gateways. Gateways are kind of important for downtowns. It's sort of creates that sense of arrival. You've made it downtown, or you're like at Settlers Park and you're in the middle of downtown and you're in West Bend. So that's sort of the framework. And then there was sort of a vision for the rest of the plan for the streetscape. This slide, again, it's really hard to read, but if you had it in front of you, it talks about the roadways, the parking. So there's these little paragraphs that talk about kind of the vision for the roadways and the vision for parking and all these other different kind of categories. And then that correlates to a series of maps. And you'll see here, the first map is a downtown parking street class and street classification map. The downtown parking one, you'll see there's 3 blue bubbles with P's. That's at the fire station, near the post office, and over by the Westbury Bank. Those are opportunities for potential redevelopment, as well as for potential longer term parking or public-private partnerships for redevelopment, as well as increasing the parking. And then with that streetscape plan, you'll see there's different categories of streets in terms of it'll have a different quality of pedestrian experiences, different types of parking, different types of outdoor dining, and other types of engagement to activate the streets. And then, so there are, I also want to mention, when you dig into the plan a little bit more, there are more examples. So in this presentation, there's just 1 or 2 examples of each of these classifications. So you can dive a little deeper if you're curious about a different street. For instance, with the streetscape details, Highway 33 is highlighted, as well as 6th Street. 33, if you think about it, for the downtown master plan, you have Regner Park on the north, and then you get to 33, and then you have sort of the core of downtown. But I don't know how many of you have actually tried to walk from like the Bend and go north, but crossing 33, you have to kind of move in a little different pattern. You have to get to the traffic lights. It's a really big street. It's not very friendly. You kind of feel like you're just in the middle of all the traffic. And so with the concept here is to put a divided median, some greenery, try to make the sidewalks a little bigger so you can get some planting areas for some trees. So you kind of soften it. And as people come through West Bend on 33, they'll start to also get a sense of what downtown is. So it's a gateway. You're introducing them. If all they do is go east and west on 33, after those improvements would be done, they'd get a better sense, and it's going to connect the northern half of downtown as well as the central core of downtown. And then 6th Street has a concept for a street that kind of, it's a street where all the different uses are maybe a little bit more equally used. So the idea is to have a little bit bigger sidewalks. So some of those activities like outdoor dining or spaces for people to engage, or maybe even outdoor display of merchandise, those types of things could actually have a place for that. The concept does decrease the parking from angle to parallel, but it kind of becomes more of a shared type street concept. And the loss of parking is fairly minimal from that perspective. So there's a lot of opportunities in this plan where you might lose a little something, but you're going to gain a lot of other things. And so I guess I'd like to, kind of mention there's always sort of trade-offs from that perspective. Let's see here. So moving on, the next 2 slides here, one is about trees, and then the other one's about wayfinding and gateways. The first slide basically talks about the streets and how those streets can actually be landscaped. So There's a couple series of colors here. So some of those streets, particularly on the edges of downtown, those can have, traditional street trees, those types of things. There's a couple streets with no vegetation. And then, for instance, on downtown, there's the opportunity for planters, larger planters with some seating, those types of things. So throughout the downtown master plan, there's a variety of concepts that can be implemented over time. Some of them are existing infrastructure or infrastructure that just can be enhanced. And then with regard to the gateway and wayfinding, that particular plan talks about, wayfinding signage so that when you're a visitor, if you're at the Bend, you might actually see a sign that tells you how to get to the art museum or vice versa, those types of things. Also, within the wayfinding is branding, imagery, those types of things that kind of create a sense of place. And then sort of the third section of the plan talks about development opportunities. So basically what the consultants did, and through the process, different areas of downtown were identified that have opportunities. And so there are concepts here. I guess what I would, to try to address one of the questions that's been asked to me about, particularly the one here, the next to the river, I think what I would encourage people to do, and when you're thinking about these concepts, is think of the ideas first, and then the pictures and the imagery are concepts, but it doesn't necessarily mean from an implementation process. My experience has been if you get to 50 or 60% of that concept, that's probably a good win. Whether that tree that's on that drawing actually ends up in that spot, or it's 5 or 10 feet away, or let's say there's some sort of interactive space for families, for kids to engage. If it's not there, but it's somewhere else on the block, that's fine too. So kind of think about this implementation as not being as 100% literal, but these are concepts, and there may be other concepts that through a design charrette or something for these spaces, more ideas might actually come about. So keep that in mind from those perspectives. And then, let's see here. Sort of to wrap it up, the plan also talks a lot about placemaking. So the placemaking has all sorts of opportunities, whether that's public seating, movable tables and chairs, activity areas for families or kids, or opportunities for seasonal type things, or evening and daytime things. So placemaking, I guess I would encourage it spans different ages. So things that are relative to 8-year-olds to 80-year-olds, as well as seasonal type things, as well as just all sorts of. There's a lot of opportunities for placemaking. And then the last discussion that was at the meeting was a highlight about the greening of Main Street, the planters. I think Mike's going to talk about those a little bit later in this meeting, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but the examples on the screen are kind of similar to what's on order and waiting for arrival. So we can talk about that later later this morning. But with that, that's kind of a quick summary of the presentation from earlier this year, but I'd be glad to answer any questions and discuss whatever's on your mind. So,
I'll ask the question that I privately asked John, which was when this plan was formulated, some of the placemaking and ideas were things like taking private parking and just magically turning it into a kid-friendly park. And my question was, how do you go about doing that transition, convincing the people to give up their parking, which is, something that makes their property more attractive, and turning that into something that other people will benefit from?
So I guess to answer that question, I touched upon it briefly in the presentation, but I think there's particular trade-offs. So from a kid-friendly park, I mean, I know there's a particular parcel that's identified in there. Whether that kid-friendly space ends up on that parcel or it ends up somewhere else, a block away or somewhere else, I think the main thing to take the takeaway is there's a desire to have a kid-friendly space. And then with regard to where that actually ends up, I think that becomes part of a public-private partnership discussion. There might be somebody who views their parcel as having excess land that they don't know what to do with, and that might be a perfect opportunity. In terms of implementation, I've seen, one traditional option would be that, that land gets purchased and it becomes in the hands of the public from that perspective. Other times it's actually an easement. So there are examples in cities all over the place that create a public easement. So it's private land, but they create an easement that allows people to actually cross that property. And I guess the other component of that is I would think about the value between different uses, because if it's a value that is used for just a small group of people versus, I'm trying to think of a good example. So hypothetically, if I owned a property downtown, if I had a space for like 3 parking spaces, but I had a restaurant and I needed more outdoor dining, and I could create a really cool courtyard, and I could actually seat 20 or more people, then my nighttime revenue or my daytime revenue would actually increase. So I may look at that and say, yeah, I have parking for 3 employees, but maybe they should park over at the public parking lot, because I can make so much more revenue if I make this into an outdoor dining area where I can actually increase my volume. So there's going to be trade-offs on different parcels, and people are going to look at it from different perspectives. So I don't know if that is a clear answer, but.
John, without having knowledge of it, what does a kid-friendly space look like?
So a kid-friendly space can be all sorts of things. So I think what probably goes into a lot of people's mind is some sort of play equipment or park-type facility. But there are a lot of communities that have kid-friendly spaces that don't have a standard, jungle gym sitting right in the middle of downtown. It could actually just be a plaza that actually is designed and has landscaping in such a way that it kind of blocks that area from traffic. So if you are, let's say there's 2 families and they want to meet up downtown and they want to have coffee on Saturday morning, you can let your kids play in this plaza and you don't have to necessarily worry that they're like literally 5 feet from traffic. It's designed in such a way that they can do creative play, and it may be a variety of raised levels and steps. A good example that I can think of is downtown Wauwatosa they have a park that's sort of by the Baskin Robbins, right, kind of in downtown, and they redid that park. It probably hadn't been redone since the 70s. It wasn't really used, and now it's sort of a little bit sunken. There's a ramp that goes in, but there's some hardscape and some grass, and there's areas for people to sit, and if you go there are families meeting, and then they let their smaller kids they're just doing creative play. There's not a swing, there's not a slide, but it's a space that parents feel safe to let their kids move around in. So they can be on two different levels, I guess.
But if it's on technically private property, is the property owner also then responsible legally if something does happen?
If it was built by a private property owner, yeah, they would, or they, that would be, it gets a little bit more complicated. But yeah, I can think of an example where an art museum, which is a nonprofit, they had a plaza in front of their building and they created what I would call a kid-friendly space, and they had some liability to that. Of course, they had signs and warnings and things like that sort of, at your own risk, stuff like that. So there's ways around that from that perspective. But if somebody had some land, they thought that a kid-friendly space would be good, but they just weren't comfortable with all that comes along with it, there probably could be a land swap or some sort of sale. Maybe the city would be willing to engage in a partnership with that or something. So. Other questions about implementation or why questions or?
John, do you expect any of this to be brought to the council in terms of zoning changes or, I guess zoning changes be the big one for the council?
From a zoning perspective, one of the projects that was not done with this, so this project has the downtown master plan, the streetscape, and then traditionally for a downtown, you'd also have design guidelines. The city does have design guidelines for downtown. They are also fairly old. The document reads both as guidelines and a report, so it's not as user-friendly to the average person because you're reading something, you're like, this doesn't sound like a guideline. It sounds like a report or something. And so that's on my list to basically bring those guidelines up to kind of the same standards that the streetscape document is at. So that probably is the first kind of policy type document. In terms of zoning, I think it's something that we probably should be looking at within the first year or two. There may be uses that are prohibited downtown that maybe should be added to that particular zoning district so that, it's a pretty robust list of things, so I don't really think there's anything missing, but having a review of it certainly doesn't hurt.
And then the other thing was you talk about fairly major changes to Highway 33, which is a state highway. You can think of that as something that is a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that somebody else is paying for it, ultimately us still, but the control for that is the state, not the city. So how do you propose getting the state to make fairly substantial changes to traffic patterns and the character of that street?
Yeah, so working the state isn't always the quickest thing. I would say over the years, working with the DOT has become better if you were to compare 20 years ago to today. If you also look at some state roads that run through other small communities in Wisconsin, the DOT is a little bit more respectful from what they might have done 20 years ago. They are actually, more aware of the desires for, pedestrian facilities and all of those types of things. So it does take a little bit of time. It also depends on how you can, so the state ranks their roads in terms of quality, and so those roads that are more worn out are going to get fixed sooner. So, there's the determination of figuring out where 33 is on that list. It may be sooner, it might be later. The other component that often happens is building relationships with your representatives and legislature and those types of things, because they can have some influence with the DOT. There's also programs out there at the federal level and other things that we as a city might choose to apply for and might be able to secure, which then comes and helps supplement the funding from the state, those types of things. And so there's a lot of different ways to kind of orchestrate it. It's not always the simplest. It may take time. It might happen quickly. It kind of varies. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for John? Nope, not at this time. Thank you
Great.
so much for presenting. It's nice to meet you formally.
Yeah, nice to meet you also.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you have any other follow-up questions in the next week or two or something, just shoot me an email or give me a phone call. I'll be glad to respond.
Your information is on the city website?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll make sure that either I or Carissa can send out an email so you have all my contact information. You can save it to your contacts.
Perfect. Thank
yep,
you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, John. And then, I'm not sure, is it Carissa, are you going to be addressing the overhead cables?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think he's gonna flip over the screen. So we did get a quote last night in regards to the overhead cables. Is everyone familiar with what overhead cables we're referring to, I guess?
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Okay.
yeah.
So there are 4 cables that run across from one building to another building. Downtown, there's 4 sections. I guess the most apparent one is the one that connects to the Bend Theater across to the other side. A lot of the time, I believe beforehand, they put banners or flags up on them. And then from my understanding, when we purchased Christmas lights, it was also discussed possibly putting Christmas lights across them. We haven't used them in a while because we're not sure how safe they are. So this would be a quote in regards to getting them inspected. Let's see. They will also prepare an approximate load capacity, how much we could actually put on each wire if they're structurally sound. So the first quote that they provided, it's $6,000 just to inspect them. Yep. And then the second quote he provided was, I guess, repairing and potentially adding new wires, which came out to about $10,000. So he was recommending that it might be worth just replacing the wires, making sure that they're safe, rather than just having them reviewed.
What would it cost to remove them?
I do not know that one.
I mean, they're used for German Fest, correct?
Yes.
They're no longer used for Christmas. What else are they used for?
So right now, because of the weight, we are only putting German Fest flags on it because
Okay.
it's unsure how much you can actually put on it. We don't want it to cause a safety issue. I know Noelle is not here, but she would like to use it for signage. So the Downtown Association is really interested in potentially using them going forward.
So there is a purpose for them?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to go for it, Doug?
I just want to address the question of how much the cost to remove them. The DPW would commit to removing them at no cost. So I'm familiar with these cables. 2 of the cables I put up myself. It's not the cable itself that I'm worried about, it's the mounting to the buildings. So that's kind of why probably the last, 5 years or so we haven't used them. So,
And I think that's why the quote is what it is, because they would actually be designing something to structurally properly hold the wires into the buildings.
I,
Doesn't explain the price of just looking at them.
Yes.
Like, I would see if they said, yes, it's 6,000 and we'll,
Oh, sorry.
it's 6,000, but we would apply that towards the 10,000 if you decide to do it, would make a little bit more sense? Okay.
That's what the second quote is.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that you're not going to do the design study and the engineering for whether the building can support those attachments for $10,000. I'm looking for the third quote. Haven't seen the letter. So, that's part of the concern that the city has noticed is we have these and they were just sort of done. They weren't done by engineers. They were done by nice guys, But I would personally, I think we're talking about, benefit to the Downtown West Bend Association and maybe German Fest. And, maybe over time we'll get 1 or 2 other people, but we should be looking at them funding it, not us funding it. And have each of the building owners that has an attachment, committed to keeping that attachment maintained, and do they have informed consent on what are the possibilities that, somebody puts too much weight on this and, rips out the front of the bend. I'm sure that those would be things that need to get looked at. I personally wouldn't be adverse to, do we really need them? I would remove them. And removing them at no cost sounds infinitely better than spending
I would
6K
agree.
or 10K.
Zero sounds really
worse.
good.
Yeah.
So for aesthetics purposes, if we don't know what we're going to be able to do with them at this point, why not at least remove them until a further decision is made?
Yeah, I think if there's a need for wires, let's go ahead and do it right, but let's design it right, not try and patch together what just got thrown up. So I don't know that
is that
at
a
this
motion?
point, can we take action? I suspect we can. We have a overhead cable. I'd make a motion to remove the overhead cables by Public Works at no cost to the bid.
Paul, you had some comments?
I was just wondering if there's a motion, which I would second.
Okay.
I just made the motion, so.
And I just made the second.
Okay. Any other discussion on the removal of the cables? If not, all those in favor of the removal of the cables between the bend and the Centrum building at a zero cost?
Well, it's all four. There's
It's all four cables, you're right. I apologize. So for all four cables, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Guess you have permission to remove the cables. Unless there's any comments, Bill, did you have a comment on that at all? No? Okay. Okay, Leona, okay, good. Okay, then we wanted to talk a little bit about the bid facade grant committee and the bid strategic plan committees. These are two committees that we wanted to get going on these two very important issues. So we thought we would just, Larry, I know, is going to do, head the strategic plan, and Mark, you've been in charge of the bid facade grant.
Yes.
Tracy Surwatt did reach out to me, and he's not able to attend this meeting, but he did want to be on both boards if possible. So I know if you want to go ahead with the facade grant, Mark?
Yeah, I'd like to propose some additions and changes to the membership of the facade grant committee. I'm proposing that we replace Jim Renke and thank him for his service to the facade grant committee by, he would be replaced by John Fellows, our planner. We would be adding two members from the bid board, Jane Peplinski and Tracy Surwatt. And then one member of the, for lack of a better term, the citizens group, and that would be Kevin Steiner to the facade grant committee. We have the facade grants out for submission now, and we'll be meeting the end of June or early in July to go over those submissions.
Okay, so that gives you 5 members, so that works out nice. Including yourself, correct?
No, it's more than that because I gotta, hold on, I gotta get into the other computer. That would give us 8, or it would give us myself, you, Tony Cable stays on. Jessica Wilds has expressed an interest in staying on. and then John Fellows, Jane Piplinski, Kevin Steiner, and Tracy Sarwat.
Perfect.
So it's still a workable group. It's, so that's my recommendation.
Okay. Any comments from anyone? All right. We could have a motion to approve the new members of the Bid Facade Grant Committee.
I'll go ahead and move it as the proposer.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then talk a little bit about the Bid Strategic Plan Committee. Larry?
Well, I brought this up prior to our latest big commitment as far as our budget goes. And I think our discretionary budget is getting smaller and smaller, so it's getting more and more important that where we spend our money, we're going to get a good return for. And I think it's wise for us to look down the road and see what we would like to do downtown and try and accomplish those goals. Some of them are probably pretty simple, and some of them are kind of pie in the sky, and those may require some co-funding. But I think that if we've been kind of reactionary in the past, and I would like to at least have something that we, kind of a format that we can follow going into the future. And what I'd like to see is 2 or 3 more board members and 2 or 3 members of the community. And I've talked to a few people that would be willing to participate and sit down and try and design how we want to do this and how we want to interview the stakeholders downtown, business owners, and certainly we'd want to work with a business association. So, I'd just like to get this rolling, and I'm willing to chair it.
You're talking about putting together like a 3 to 5 year plan for the bid,
Exactly.
correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, and the people that you have interested right now, you've talked with Jeannie Reinick from Saving Time and
Kevin Schultz.
Kevin Schultz. Okay. Are there any other bid members that would be interested in this committee?
I would be interested.
And I think Tracy wants to be on every committee, so
Yep.
I think we can put him down.
And I would like to propose that we add somebody from the Concerned Citizens Group, whatever. I keep telling them they need a name, but
Yeah, I think that's wise to do that also.
and I can, I'll be calling Kevin Steiner a little later, but I'd propose that he might be the appropriate individual if he's willing to serve.
That'd be great.
Okay, so for both of these, Mark, from your past experience, I've always just gotten the agenda and told me when to show up. So what is the actual proper way of getting one of these meetings started so that we can roll with it?
They get noticed, and you can do that through Carissa,
Okay.
our executive director.
Okay,
And
so Larry, you would have to reach out to Carissa to get a time set. And they're usually held here at City Hall?
Yeah, we've generally held them in one of the conference
Conference
rooms. If you had a large public hearing or something, we could look at using this room.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor of forming and organizing the Bid Strategic Plan Committee, say, oh, I'm sorry, we need a motion.
I'll move to form the committee
Thank you.
as discussed here with Larry Porter for the chair.
I'll second it since I've been doing it all day. So,
Thank you, Paul. Again, all those then in favor of forming the Bid Strategic Plan Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on, we have the Downtown Planter Project update. Who is giving that? Aha, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. Planters and pots should be arriving hopefully tomorrow. Not all of them, the first shipment tomorrow. We're looking at taking our first shipment tomorrow morning downtown. It's only going to be 18 of the 90 whatever pots that are going to be installed. When we get these, we will start installing them from the north end, working our way south. So I believe there's 10 of the 72-inch diameter tree pots, some of the other various square, rectangle pots, things like that. Throughout this week and next week, we should be getting the rest of the pots. As we get them, we will place them in the mornings downtown so we don't interrupt, everyone's business and their day and traffic and parking and all that stuff. So once we get the pots in, we are also waiting for a shipment of the irrigation tanks, the tanks that go inside the pots that help irrigate the vegetation that's in there. Once we get all of those materials in-house and we get them down there, then we will know when we can do our planting dates and things like that. I've put 30 different schedules together, and every other day it changes and all that stuff. So I'm just kind of done putting schedules together. As they come, we will be placing them downtown. So it's not going to be one day you're going to wake up, go downtown, and there's 90 pots. It's going to be hopefully tomorrow into Thursday, 18 pots. Hopefully later this week we get another shipment in the next week. So yeah, it's happening. We got to get them here. So somewhere in the state of Wisconsin, there's a flatbed truck with 18 pots on it. I hope to see it tomorrow morning. So, anything else with that? Great,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, then we have, last but not least, Leona and Bill, come on up from the Bend. Give us a nice report on how successful your last week's block party was. First ever in West Bend.
First ever, yeah. So the agenda had Leona as the speaker, and I'm not Leona, I'm Bill. I'm the executive director, but I wanted to introduce Leona. Leona recently joined our staff, and she is our co-executive director. Leona and I are both going to manage the Bend until I decide that I don't want to spend every Friday and Saturday night there till midnight. So it'll be a slow transition. So what we wanted to do first is, the last time I was here, I talked a little bit about this SL100 trailer that was going to be coming in. We have a video we'd like to show you, because I'm not sure if all of you were there or not, but it was pretty remarkable.
All right, here we go. It's a fast one.
It's amazing what a couple of rounds of espresso does for your staff. Yeah, it pulled in like a semi, and then we said it was like a transformer where the sides come out, the roof goes up. Serigraph helped us with the banners. But yeah, it was amazing. Were a lot of you there? I know Jane was there, Mark. I mean, it was a phenomenal event. I have not heard one negative, maybe I had one negative comment. Some people didn't like the idea that we had the DJ. They wanted it to be all music, but we just thought it would be fun to have a DJ in there to just kind of break things up a little bit while the bands could change. But other than that, I mean, all of the attendees liked it. I think most of the businesses, I've heard nothing but positive.
It's been very positive. And we had a lot of attendees. For those of you that weren't there, just to give you an idea, here's a little snippet of the street.
Sean, our marketing guy, did a little video.
Sorry, guys.
So what this did for the Bend was that, we said we're kind of locked within our four walls. We can have, there's only so many weekends in a year, and we can seat 330 people. So that's pretty much the limit of what the Bend can do. Our president, Nick, said we got to get the Bend outside of our four walls. So this was kind of one of our first attempts to show the brand of the Bend outside of the building. So we plan to do more of these. I mean, this isn't inexpensive. This event cost about $15,000, and we are planning on doing the September 5th block party also. What we're doing now is we're working on sponsors. The city did help us with some of the funding. Like I said, Serigraph did the banners. I think it was Hanson and Company Real Estate helped support the beer stands from the Downtown Association. So we're going to keep looking for additional sponsors to help defray some of the costs of this. The bands were about $5,000, and the stage and the sound and lighting was about $10,000. So it's not cheap, but it was so worth it. It was just really, really fun.
And then the September 5th will be the end of the Music on Main series, so that'll be our final block party, and so we're excited to do that also with the Downtown West Bend Association. And so we think it was we know it was a very successful event. We've had really good response to everything, and we're looking forward to the next one.
And then Peggy, you asked us to just talk about maybe some upcoming things, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to know what you guys are doing.
Yeah, 'cause it really helps the whole downtown. People go out to
Absolutely.
eat beforehand, they go to drink afterwards, so.
We have a lot of things going on, but we've been very strategic in how we plan them. We did not want to interfere with the Music on Main series on Thursdays, so we have a number of things happening on Wednesdays. But actually today we have Hotel California. It's an Eagles tribute band coming in, and they're a 2-day for us because we had a really good turnout for ticket sales. So it'll be tonight and tomorrow night.
Both pretty much sold out, both
Almost,
nights.
yep.
So.
And then next week, on the 19th, I'm sorry, is that the following week? On the 19th, Wednesday, we have Ragdolls coming in. They're an all-female Aerosmith band. Then on the July 10th, which is also Wednesday, is the Fortunate Sons, Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute. The 31st, we have No Can Do, a tribute to Hall & Oates is coming in. That's also Wednesday. The only one that's not on a Wednesday is a Friday. We have Jade Johnson coming in. She is a local Germantown singer-songwriter who has made it big in Nashville, and so she's actually coming back into the area to perform for us on August 2nd. August 7th, we have Fool House coming in. It's a 90s dance party. And August 21st, we have Hopelessly Devoted, a tribute to Olivia Newton-John. Those are all on the Wednesdays. But the big one we have is coming up very soon. On July 16th, we have Pam Tillis coming in. So we're really excited about that one. We sold a lot of tickets already. It was kind of almost a last-minute kind of blessing that she happened to be in the area and was able to give us a very good chance to bring her into town. So
That's the granddaughter of Mel Tillis, so, we do tributes because a lot of people like the familiarity of the music, but we also like to have new artists like a Pam Tillis. And
Jade Johnson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happening at the Bend. I know I see a lot of you guys around, and we appreciate your support. We appreciate the community's support and the city's support. So hope to see you at a show soon.
Thank you so much for reporting on that. Welcome, Leona.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The quality of the talent that you guys bring to West Bend is phenomenal. So, yeah, I know a lot of people in the community enjoy it, but it really brings a lot of people from outside the community. I'm always surprised, like people staying at the Airbnb and that they're coming for the shows, and they're coming from Fond du Lac and Green Bay and Appleton, and it's just really nice to see other people coming and spending time in our wonderful downtown. So thank you. Okay, moving on. I think that was it. Is there any agenda items for next meeting that anybody would like to address? Okay, as always, if there are things, you can address them, give them to Carissa to make sure that they get on the agenda. Other than that, make a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
All right.
All right, happy Tuesday.